Good evening, everyone. Today's November 13, 2025, and it is 6:36. My name is Jenny Rivera, and I chair the Holyoke City Council Public Safety Committee. Before we begin our agenda, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the members of the committee. So today joining me is Councilor Carmen Ocasio. Unfortunately, Patty Devine or Israel Rivera weren't able to attend due to prior commitments, but Carmen is joining me. And also in chambers, we have Chad Primo. He's Fitch and Associates?
Yeah, I'm a senior associate with the consulting firm Fitch and Associates.
Okay, thank you. We have George. I'm killing your last names. Medi, Fire Commissioner. We also have Chris Norris, Fire Chief from East Hampton. We have Chief John Kay, Fire Chief. William Alicea, he's the Local 1693, the ex-president. We also have Eddie Rodriguez, Local 1693 president. We also have Frank Moneo? McNeil, okay. Senior Director of OPS, Cadalda Ambulance. And we also have Matt Wilanchik from Local 1693. Thank you all for coming. I know I killed your last names, but thank you all for being here. Today's meeting is being held in chambers on Zoom. It is being broadcasted live on Public Access Channel. We are also being recorded by Zoom, and we are being streamed and are in person. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss and address various matters related to public safety within our community. And with that being said, let's officially commence our Public Safety Committee.
Motion to take item 1 off the table.
Motion 1 has been made and seconded. So let's start with our first item of business, and we'll start with Chad Primo, and you have the floor. Just make sure you're, there you go.
Hi, thanks everybody for having me. I'm here as a senior associate with Fitch and Associates. So we did a study for the city of Holyoke, a feasibility study on should the city start up transport ambulance service. So I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation about some of our high-level findings, and I'm happy to take questions too. So let me go ahead and see here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Let me move some. Okay, we should be good. Okay, like I said, my name's Chad. I'm with Fitch and Associates. Just a little background on our firm. Fitch and Associates, we're a public safety consulting firm, and we've been in business for over 40 years now. We're based out of Platte City, which is over by Kansas City. I actually live over by Toledo, Ohio, though. So, you know, with the pandemic, a lot of us got used to remote work, so which is great. So we don't have to go to Kansas City as often now, so we appreciate that. But we do a lot of studies on fire departments, ambulance services, dispatch centers, police departments. We do some healthcare, hospital consulting too. So that's a little bit about our background. My background is I was a paramedic for over 30 years, and I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree, and I've served in the capacity of many different capacities, including running ambulance and flight services. So that's who I am, just so you know. So anyways, get that all out of the way. The goals of the study, we did a feasibility study for the Holyoke Fire Department about taking on transport EMS services. So the idea of should the fire department go ahead and start an ambulance service that would transport patients to the hospital. The high level objectives and goals of that were to complete a comprehensive assessment of the current EMS system and all the contracts that are involved with the private EMS providers and the medical center and the current dispatch protocols. Review the current and projected calls for service, review and analyze the municipal ordinances and the policies related to EMS, review Holyoke Medical Center's non-emergency transport volume, which plays a pretty big role in this scenario. do an analysis of the fire department's infrastructure, and conduct a response time analysis. So those were the goals of the study. There's a long list of the desired outcomes, and they're all very small writing, so I'm not going to read through each one of those. But basically, a couple of the key ones was to see what the feasibility of the fire department was to provide those transport services. Another one is to budget models out for different scenarios if they did provide the service, and I think we'll get into that a little bit more. And also to provide detailed steps and if they wanted to start certain services. So those were some of the desired outcomes of what we tried to do with the chief in the department. Our methodology, we're usually pretty data heavy when we do these things. We try to take the emotion out of it because it helps serve the community the best that way. So to get down to the data and see what's really going on. So first, we always do bi-weekly coordination meetings, and we did that with the city here too. We met every other week. We conducted and validated the call volumes and the organizational data from the CAD system, which is where the system that takes in all the calls, so that's where we know where all the responses are. We submitted and followed up on the information data requests we gave and validated that data. And then we cleaned up and audited the data to remove any duplicates, because sometimes that can happen when you get multiple 911 calls in. We made sure that the geographic information was correct. And then we also standardized the location identifiers that we got from the CAD. Then we geocoded the addresses to establish the final database for the analysis. And then we send that to our data scientists, and they really crunch the numbers. And we analyzed the call volumes and the individual events and modeled the response times. And we generally do three different models. And for the city, we did a 6, 8, and a 10-minute response time interval model. So that's what we looked at. Then we evaluate the deployment strategies to see if it matches the supply of the ambulances matches the demands in the community. And then we reviewed the findings with the city leadership. So that was the methodology we used. Our initial findings, this is a brief summary. We have a full report that anybody is, yeah. And yeah, so there's plenty of detail in there. So I'm just going to go over the summary, a summary of the initial findings. We estimated that a private contractor would lose annually about $640,000 if they just did 911 calls. So that means that they wouldn't be able to bill enough to reimburse their services through government payers and private payers to make up if they only did 911 calls. When you throw in the non-emergency calls to the hospital and other facilities, now you flip into a profitable operation. So, and we would estimate that that would be about an 11 to 12% profit margin. So a little over $680,000 profit. So in order for a system to be sustainable, it's really, there's a necessity that you do both. Because if you do one or the other, you're not going to be able to make that margin, if that makes sense. So we looked at the fire departments and their operation, and if they were to do a full system operation, so if the fire department came in and did the 911 calls, we estimated it would cost the city about $2.2 to $4 million annually for them to do that. So that's a pretty big cost. If they were, and that depends if they did just the 911 calls or if they tried to do all the non-emergency calls too. So we looked at that and we're like, that's a pretty big cost. So we looked at then, what if they came in and did some partial operations? So a partnership with a private provider. And when we looked at that, that's when things got a little bit more reasonable, because the fire department already has personnel, staff that could assume some of these operations. And then once you add in the cost of an ambulance or two, now you start to maybe break even if you get a couple calls a day, 2 to 3 calls a day. So that's kind of where we landed. Let's get a little bit more though into some of the current system design features. So the current high-level contract points here, the contract began in September 2022, and it's for a 1-year agreement with extensions for satisfactory performance for 3 additional 1-year terms. So that's the contract you have with the current provider. The response time expectations are 8 minutes at the 90th percentile, which means 9 out of 10 times they'll be there within 8 minutes. And they also have a dedicated backup. They're supposed to have 6 units with not less than 3 on at night, and that can be a mix of advanced life support and basic life support ambulances. And they can use those units to do hospital business too, which makes sense because otherwise they wouldn't be able to make a margin to stay sustainable. And it's a no subsidy contract. And I'll just say those are getting more rare, just so you know. In your community, you do approximately around 13,000 emergency calls, and of those you transport about 9,500 of those. And then the non-emergency calls, you do about 4,400 and transport about 4,200 of those. So a total transport volume of almost, it looks just a little north of 13,500 with a call volume of 17,600. So it's not a ton of calls, but it's certainly for the size of the area, it's still pretty robust. And this is, I put in some more call data in here that people can review. This breaks down the calls by the priority. So emergency versus non-emergency and ALS versus BLS. So we get pretty granular when we look at these run volumes. That helps us to forecast what we think is going to happen, and it also helps us to see how much the system costs and what it takes the system to be sustainable. So here's a couple examples of that. And these tables are in the data report we also provided, so we do a separate data report too. So this is probably a slide that kind of helps to tell the story. So this graph shows the hour of day, and it shows the average number of responses by hour of day. So you can see about 8 o'clock at night, or 8 o'clock in the morning, things start to ramp up, and they really don't slow down until 8 o'clock at night. But you see those 2 big peaks in the middle of the day. That's where the system is getting stressed, because that's where the non-emergency volume's starting to hit. So the hospital in the middle of the day is moving their patients too, and then you also have the 911 stuff going on. So you can see where you really start to peak up during the middle of the day. This is a heat map on the left that we did. So this shows where the responses were, and you have one big hot spot right there, and that's where a lot of responses tend to happen. And then obviously right in the city here. And then on the right, we do a risk mapping, and that validates where the high density call volumes are in the community. And that correlates right to where the stations are too. So that's good. So the stations basically are where they need to be, that's for sure. So, and I think this slide really tells the tale of what we're getting at. So the current contracted staffing is on the top. This is a staffing to demand chart. So the red line on the top is the number of ambulances that are on at any given hour of the day. So, and this graph goes over 1 week. So Sunday to Saturday. And then the volumes are the bars there for each hour of the day. So you see they peak up and go down. And you can see where that red line is above all of those bars. So that's great. It only dips below the blue line there in one instance. So if the contractor was to run the volume, just the 911 volume with the staffing, things would be okay. Now, when you add the 911 and hospital responses, you can start to see where that's where the system gets stressed. Once you add those non-emergency responses in, things get rough, and a lot of the bars turn yellow, some turn red. The workload goes from about 37% to 81%. So that's pretty significant. So we looked at the various models, like I said. I mean, we looked at if the fire department did just 911, if the fire department did everything, but then we also looked at if the fire department were to just incrementally support EMS. So more of a partnership model with the current contractor. And that's really where it became evident that that's probably a good starting point for the community. So I'm going to focus on that here. We're not going to, I didn't think it would be valuable to talk about the other two scenarios, other than the fact that they did cost quite a bit of money. So here's the financials behind it. Basically, on the right-hand side is the transports per day required to be revenue neutral. So this would be to make up the expenses of adding an ambulance for the fire department. So one unit, they would need roughly about 3 calls a day to break revenue neutral. No overhead would be required for the first 1 or 2 ambulances, because the city already has the department staffed to handle that, so they wouldn't have to hire any more people. So the effective fire force can cover that. And actually, they already are sending out trucks when the system hits status 0 now to help out. So now they would just be able to send them out in an ambulance, which is even better. So they could be overflow and use a BLS unit to help the current contractor here, which is the route we're really looking at. So, and here's all the finances behind that. I'm not going to walk through this whole thing because, one, there's no way I could see it right now, but it's all in the report too. And please dig in if you want to. And a lot of this is estimated on not the current contractor, but what we thought a private provider would be. So the numbers might be a little different in their books, because they're a private company. So they weren't required to share their financials with us. So. Here is the current org chart that lays out the staffing at the fire department and shows that they could support that expansion without hiring any new existing employees. So they could do it with existing employees. And here's your basic roll-up for some of the financials. So as you can see, for the 911 model only, for 1 ambulance or 2 ambulances, there's really no added expense. It's only when you hit that 3rd ambulance, and then you would be looking at about $150,000 in personnel costs to make that up. So you could go 1 to 2 ambulances before you had to start hiring people. Here's all the assumptions we made. Again, I'm not going to read through all that. We assume certain service level mixes and payer level mixes based off our experience and mileages and the charge master that would be used to bill the insurance companies with. All that data is here, so if anybody wants to look at that, how we came to some of these things, that's all there. So basically, I want to go back to this slide here. So you can see, once that 1 ambulance is added in, if you were to move that red line on the bottom up 1, all of these stresses would tend to go away. So when the fire chief talks about putting on a backup BLS ambulance to help out when the system's stressed, that really does make a lot of sense here. And I think it can help the current contractor when they just hit peak status to make some response times a little bit more efficient. I don't want to speak for them, but that's kind of what the data is showing us. So I know that was a little fast and a little high level. Does anybody have any specific questions I can answer?
Does anyone else want to speak on this before?
I'll speak.
Okay.
So what we talked about, we went through a bunch of different ways of way we could implement an ambulance into the system. We've worked very hand in hand with Cataldo on this, because the key for us is we don't want to hurt the system. We don't want to put anything in that's going to stress the system in a different way, especially financially. So we had probably a handful of meetings with Cataldo to talk about what's going to be the best way for all of us to have this work. And what we did come up with in the end is to have a true partnership. What we should be doing is helping them by supplementing when they need it. So if we ran a 24/7 backup ambulance for them, when they're going to these what we call level 0 calls, when they have no ambulances in the system to respond, that's going to take a pretty good burden off them, because what they're not doing is they're not searching around to other communities to see if they can find mutual aid for themselves, someone to come in to respond. It doesn't put stress on their crews attempting to clear someone faster than they really should be trying to clear out of the hospital. So what we want to do is, talking about the different ways we could do it, we wanted to come up with a way that was a true partnership with them, where what we did is we just basically made the system better. And what we didn't want to do is put them in a situation where they felt that they had to either make cuts in order to keep from having to go into deficit or lose money. So this is definitely just adding to the system. We feel it's the best way for us to supplement the system, to make the system more robust for the citizens of Holyoke, because what we really, the main goal of this is to get a better product for the citizens. You know, we want them to have a better product. We want them to get more response in a more timely fashion. So us supplementing it, we felt was the biggest thing, that it just made sense to us to come in a way that's going to give the taxpayer and the citizen of Holyoke a better product, with at the same time not hurting our partner. So that's how we came to where we were with this.
Okay, thank you. Would you?
From our perspective, I can reiterate a lot of what you've already heard. Our company has 18 primary 911 contracts across the state, and we do mutual aid into dozens of other communities. So we live and die in a lot of the state on 911 calls. This is a unique situation here in Holyoke, and I think some of your financial numbers I'd agree with. Some of them I wish we could get that kind of profit margin here, but municipalities do math differently than private business does. But it is a struggle here to make any money, and you're pretty close on those numbers with the 911 business in this city. It is close to a $700,000 loss if you were just strictly doing 911 business here. So the relationship that we've developed with Holyoke Medical Center over the last 10 years, me personally, we developed a hybrid system where there are several trucks a day that are dedicated to 911 calls. But the second half of our system, there's 5 trucks that we have in the city that we kind of dovetail back and forth between doing transfers out of the hospital and answering 911 calls here. And as the term that the chief used is the one we use, level 0. And that level 0 plus 1 means we have 1 left in the city. And when we reach that point, we stop doing business at the hospital, and they start to get delays, because we don't want to take that last truck out of service, because the next call that might come in might be 2 minutes after we commit to the hospital, and now somebody is in need of an ambulance in an emergency situation. And currently we're asking mutual aid coming from other services from out of Holyoke that our biggest concern in that case might be somebody in cardiac arrest, or it might be a trauma, and we're waiting on a truck coming from another community that may take minutes when seconds really is what they need. So for this opportunity to have a truck available to us when we do reach that level 0 in the city of Holyoke is vitally important, and it will play a role someday in somebody's life. And we value that relationship. And of those many 911 contracts we have across the state, and many of them we do partnerships with fire departments in that town. I think this one, from our perspective, in a city where our margins are so tight, this is the kind of system we need. We need something to supplement us, because if it were a situation where revenue is being taken away from us, we'd have to take resources out of the city, because we can't lose money.
Right.
So this is the perfect scenario, we think, at this point, is for them to put a truck up to supplement what we do at the time of day when we need it the most. So I think, through all of these iterations that the Fitch folks have gone through, we appreciate the diligence that you guys, went through, because some communities leap before they think.
Yeah.
And we deal with a couple of cities right now that kind of overcommitted to their fire department ambulances and then retracted and took several ambulances back because they found that and Lynn is one of them in particular, where the taxpayers couldn't fund those losses associated with the 911 system. So this was really worth the effort, and I think the chief has made a great decision.
I would add one more thing too. When you talk about the system, we like to conveniently divide it between 911 and hospital stuff, but the reality is both are your community, right? I mean, the people in the hospital that need those transports are also the community and the citizens here, and it can be equally detrimental and frustrating for them if they can't get to the services they need on time. So when you look at a system as a whole, getting a partnership to make sure there's enough resources for when 911 calls happen that are unpredictable, it's very important. And if you can do that and maintain that balance and still have a 0 subsidy contract, that's pretty impressive. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something I should have mentioned. Because very often the sickest person in the city that needs an ALS truck is sitting in the emergency department at Holyoke Medical Center. Holyoke Medical Center let us know this week that the state was in and reviewed our combined services, and the state's words were Holyoke Medical Center and Cataldo Ambulance have become the gold standard from a timing standpoint for transfers to Bay State for STEMIs. STEMI is I don't know if you know, but it's a procedure that needs to go to the cath lab at Bay State, and minutes are very important. And oftentimes when we bring patients into to the emergency room at Holyoke Medical Center, they decline quickly. They had an unforeseen episode or something that we couldn't diagnose on the way in and take to Bay State directly. We'll drop off at Holyoke, and when they get there, Holyoke will diagnose something that needs to go to Bay State right away. And that becomes, to us, the next 911 call in the city. We have a lights and siren response to the emergency room. We rush in, we load the patient and go lights and siren to Bay State. And the timing that we have had with Holyoke, and I will give Kyle Cameron and his crew over there kudos. They do a tremendous job of packaging that patient while we're on the way. And sometimes we transfer in just a couple of minutes and we're out the door. So that sometimes is that unpredictable episode where that truck now will have to leave the city and be out of our system for over an hour because now you're at Bay State. So again, that just goes to the importance of having another alternative in the city that will help us during those peak times.
yeah, so that extra backup truck will help smooth out not only the 911 stuff in the system, but will help Cataldo smooth some of that interfacility stuff out too if they need to. So, because they'll have that extra backup if they need it, which is
Okay.
great, so.
Any questions, Councilor?
No, not a question, but I was always wondering how come the fire department, fire trucks come first and then the ambulance. And I was just wondering all the time, why is the fire department here when it's just for ambulance? So that was weird.
No, I certainly don't want you to. There's a couple of reasons. One, and it's something that I'm honestly, we work very diligently on our side of the house to try to cut seconds, minutes out of our response times. But what happens is the 911 call comes into the Holyoke Police Department. That's the primary public answering point. And at that point, the fire is made aware that there's a call. And we have somebody inside fire alarm. We know when the call comes in. And their response is immediate because they know there's a call at 600 high. But what our process is then is it's emergency medical dispatching. So that's that person that picks up the phone and says, what's the nature of your emergency? And then we'll speak to the person calling. Now, while we're speaking to that person, fire has dispatched. And very often, because of the geography involved, they're spaced around the city. They're closer to the call than we are. So, but what that process is that's going on in the background is our operator is determining what level of service we need to provide to that patient. And in Holyoke, we do kind of an advanced level EMD, where if it is a level 1 call, a priority call, and it requires a paramedic, we will send a paramedic unit. However, if it is not an emergency, and in a community like Holyoke, and we have a lot of them, we do Chelsea, Lynn, Revere, and a lot of communities that are similar to Holyoke, where a lot of folks that call 911, they're disconnected from the primary care base, really, where a lot of folks call us for things that are less than life-threatening. And we'll send a basic life support ambulance at that point, and we won't even put lights and siren on. We'll have a priority 2 response. That ambulance travels with traffic. And that's for a lot of reasons. When we first spoke about doing this, Mayor Morse was here. And if you work in this building, and ironically, while we were having that meeting down the hall, I had 2 trucks screaming by here with lights and sirens, and he's like, see, Frank, I listen to this all day long. And the city of Holyoke is a loud city sometimes when we're running around with these ambulances with the sirens blaring. So we decided to change how we do that, that if we take a minute and talk to the person on the phone and determine that it's less than life-threatening, one, we're not going to send a vehicle screeching through the city that could endanger our crew and the citizens. We're going to slow down that response, and we're going to get there safely. But we only do that on calls that we've determined are less than life-threatening. So that's probably what you're seeing. And I think the other obvious is the firehouses are spread around the city, and they're just closer to the call.
Yeah, they're located pretty well.
Does that help?
Yes, it do. Because I was just wondering all these years, and I meant to be asking the fire department why they do that. But, yeah.
Well, and that's designed that way too, because in the situations where it's a really emergent call, you want someone there as fast as you can possibly get there when it's seconds and minutes matter. So the seconds or minutes that we get there before and able to start performing CPR or give an Narcan or, rescue breathing or whatever that life-saving intervention may be, can be the difference between life and death. That's why it's like, okay, well, we may be there a minute earlier, but that minute may make the difference. And that's why that model is in most every city that you're going to see runs that similar model of response.
I also had another question. How fast do you guys prepare the ambulance if any of them break down? Like 2 weeks ago, ambulance was called to the next building where I live at. And I don't know what happened to the ambulance. It just wouldn't move or whatever. So they had to call another ambulance to come quick, to get the patient out really quick. So how long do you guys replace the ambulance when they break down? I mean, I don't know.
Well, we generally have 2 spares in the city every day. And we also have a building in Springfield where we have a spare ambulance. Unfortunately, those things happen sometimes. Because there's a lot of onboard electrical systems that if somebody didn't plug them in, sometimes they go. But things happen. I think I recall the episode you're talking about. Fortunately, we had another truck that was available pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But they're vehicles just like everybody else has. Sometimes they break, and but we have a pretty. I think we have up to 10 spares in this system every day that we don't use, that can be brought to the city pretty quickly. So, and we always have more trucks in the city than we're contracted for.
It just to add a little bit to that too. I would say ambulances generally are run a little harder than most vehicles are too, because they do lights and sirens runs, so it can be a lot of fast stops, fast starts, and they also have a lot of idle time at the hospitals sometimes, especially when the weather's cold, which can be hard on the engines. So I would say, just to put a plug in here for the chief, one is a very lonely number when it comes to ambulances. So it's always good to have two.
Yeah.
One in service and one backup, because you don't want to be left with just one, because especially if you got to get it in somewhere to get fixed. They're complicated vehicles and they can take a little while to fix too sometimes.
Yeah, that is a very good point, and valid to mention that they're specialized vehicles.
Yeah.
So if something breaks, it's not like you just go down to the Ford dealer. Sometimes you can go to the Ford dealer and they can fix it.
Hopefully.
But sometimes that thing will sit there for weeks. And let me tell you, when I drive by Marcotte and we have one of those vehicles sitting there for a week, I'm not happy, because they are run rough. That is a valid point. And Holyoke in particular is a tough city. And you'll know this because there are streets in this city where about every 100 yards there's a stop sign.
Yeah.
And speed bumps. And it's amazing how many employees find speed bumps the hard way, as they're,
Right.
But I joke about the city of Holyoke, but this is really a community where we have a lot of Holyoke residents that work for us. We bought a building here. We're taxpayers. We love the city. We'll be here forever, if it's up to us, and because that's our business. If we have contracts that we've had for over 40 years as a company. We believe in buying buildings in the cities we work in. We belong to the chambers of commerce and we support local charities. And Holyoke has been a very receptive city. So this approach has been something that's been refreshing for us. And we look forward to them getting up and running.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to, on what Carmen just asked, Councilor Ocasio just asked about why you guys get there. So about a month ago, I had a call, 911, from my dad. He's 84 with dementia. So they were asking me questions. I answered them. So you guys got there first. The ambulance got there after, but what I told them when they got there was worse than what I had said. So now they had to pull out another ambulance. So now we had the fire department, one ambulance, a second ambulance, and then they had to sit there and wait for a supervisor to show up. So I get it, and I feel what the study is amazing. I'm all for it. I'm going to support it. We do need it. And, yeah, I'm all for it. Now, I do see this was referred over by the finance. Was this brought up?
It somehow got sent to finance when we basically submitted the study to the council. And it initially got referred to finance, and we weren't looking for financing at that point. We just wanted to present it to the council.
Okay.
The mayor wanted us to present it to you guys, so the study was there, what was in it, basically so that you guys have an idea of what we're looking to do.
Okay.
And then when we talk to the mayor and we figure out what we're gonna do and if and when we're gonna do it, then at that point, we'd be actually going in with, looking to buy equipment, and that's when we would be going to.
Right. I was like, wait, this was referred to me by finance. All right.
So that's what happened. It just got referred to finance, and I talked to Councilor Devine and, asked if she could just refer it back to the council, so it get referred to public safety, where we felt it was the right place to present the study.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Very informational. The study was amazing, excellent.
Thank you.
I do want to recognize Councilor Meg McGrath-Smith. She's going to be part of the second but she is online. Before you guys go, I would like for her to see if she has anything to add to it, and also recognize, and I apologize, I didn't mention our attorney Bissonette was also online. So I'm not sure if Meg want to add anything to it, or she has any questions.
No worries at all. I was happy to listen to the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So once again, thank you for coming down. The study, like I said, was amazing. We have it. Anybody else needs it, we have Jeffrey Anderson Burgos that can hand it out, and thank you very much.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We appreciate the partnership, and if there's anything we can do, just, Chief's got our number, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Nice presentation, thank you.
So I would say this was complied with.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you once again. Now you want to do motion to take up item 2?
Motion to take up item 2.
Okay. Alrighty, thank you. Oh, you did? We already did? Okay. All right, so we are taking item 2. It's been seconded, and this order was filed by Councilor Meg McGrath-Smith, which she is currently online. Order that the fire chief communicate a written plan for supporting firefighters to successfully complete their EMT certifications, especially for those who have previously failed to pass the exams required and are approaching the 2-year deadline. This was tabled back in December of 2024, again, December 30th of 2024, and then back in March of 2025. I do remember when you guys came in and had a little discussion. So, Chief, I will give you the floor.
How you doing? So I guess we'll go quick through the background of the EMT. So back in 1997, Chief LaFawn, who was the chief at the time, with the vision of someday being able to provide ambulance services for the city, made it a condition of employment to be a basic EMT. At the time, it was a 1-year time frame to get their EMT. What they ended up doing was determining that basically with the fire academy and the things you're doing in the first year of employment, that they moved to 2 years. So what happens is they basically, when they get hired by the City of Holyoke Fire Department, if they're not already an EMT, and now we're at the point where everyone except for 2, well, there's 3 people left on the job that aren't mandated EMTs. So we're at the point where we have a really robust system, actually a very robust support system for people while they're taking their EMT. You know, when I got my EMT, there was 10 EMTs on the job. So 90% of the guys on the job, or men or women on the job, had no idea what you were doing in class. You know, you showed up with your books and you'd read and study, and they had no idea what you were doing, what kind of stuff you were studying or anything like that. They just knew that now they had an EMT to go on a medical call with. So basically, at that point, they get hired, they do the fire academy, and then they'll sign up and take first available EMT class. We haven't, to be honest, had a lot of issues. For some reason that we had that one hiring where we had a couple people have issues. Besides that, we really haven't had any issues with people getting their EMT. But when it gets down to like the support system, I mean, we have a training officer. Our training officer is a paramedic. Everyone, like I said, we have multiple paramedics on the job. We have one advanced EMT, which is used to be an intermediate. It's in between, basically skill-wise, a basic. It's still considered like advanced life support, but it's in between a basic and a paramedic. So we have a pretty good system of support for these people. The issue we run into is we have to know they're struggling. You know what I mean? A lot of the guys, I'm not sure whether it's pride or embarrassment or whatever, won't come out and actually say, listen, I'm struggling, I need help. And by the time we find out that they're struggling, it can be too late. So I think the biggest issue we have, Counselor, is people understanding that, at the 1 year mark, if they don't have their EMT yet, they come in front of the commission and they're basically saying, yes, we want to go to the 2 year mark, here's where I'm at. And I think that's at a time when if they're struggling, yes, they definitely should mention something there. Listen, I'm having trouble with this. I'm not understanding, I'm having a difficult time. But the problem we run into is even if you have a policy, you have to have people say that they're struggling in order to be able to help them, because we have, like I said, I think we have all the resources they need to be able to help them on the job right now. It's having people understand that it's okay to need help. You know what I mean? It's nothing to be ashamed of to need help. Everyone needs help at different points. We have some of the same issues when they go to the Mass Fire Academy. So you have to go to Mass Fire Academy and pass the Mass Fire Academy and also pass the firefighter, would be a firefighter 1 and 2 test. And that's a place that people can struggle. We've had people in the past not make it. And at that point, you just can't even be employed by the department. And we don't even know they're having trouble until it's too late. And really there's not a lot we can do. They have resources at the academy for them. They have people that are like tutors and they're educational specialists that can help them. But same thing with the academy, you have to ask and you have to tell them, listen, I'm struggling. What are my, what do you have that I can, take part in that's going to help me? So I think the biggest issue we have is people recognizing and acknowledging that they need help. Because once we get there, we have a lot of resources at the department just within personnel, and we have a lot of knowledge of EMS and people that can help them get through and then point them towards whatever types of study aids there may be. Because they're robust. The amount of study aids and study guides that they make for the basic EMT, you can find hundreds of different ones, and it's figuring out what method works for you. I think sometimes things we've noticed too is people aren't really sure of how to study. You know what I mean? And I'm not sure but they're just not really sure of how to study and how to put information together. So they have to kind of figure out, get help from someone, and we have people that help them. Okay, well, have you tried this? Have you tried making flashcards? Have you tried writing down information in a book? Have you tried using this study guide? Have you tried using rapid fire questions? All those other things that are out there for them. So, I mean, as far as like policy, I'm not sure what you would want to put in a policy, because it's really, the main issue I feel we have is people just not recognizing that they need help, or recognizing it and not wanting, I don't know if it's ashamed of asking for help, but they shouldn't, but people need to ask for help when they, when you start struggling, if you're in the class and you're struggling, you're having a hard time, you have to ask for help, because we don't know you need help until you need help. The problem with the test is they can sign up and take the test, up to 3 times, and we don't even know they're taking it until, so, it's like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, good. I'm studying, I'm going to take the test. And, next thing you know, you find out they've already used all of them, and they have to do at that point a 24-hour refresher, and then they could get 3 more tests. So they have an option with one class to take up to 6 tests to try to pass. And the other problem is if you don't get them in right away, you don't leave yourself the ability to take another class either. It is about a 4-month program, and then it's also, once you're finished with the program, it's up to 4 to 6 weeks to get in and take a test, to get those tests, because you have to take, a practical board, and then when you pass a practical board, then you have to take the written board. And no one really struggles with the practical. They get through the practical. It's when it comes to the written that they end up, if they struggle. But again, we haven't had a huge issue with people. We had like I said, it was one hiring that there was a couple people that struggled with it. There's 3 of them, and I don't understand it. It was kind of, and none of them really asked for help until we found out that they don't have another shot to get it done. Then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I struggle with that hard time. And it's hard to help people at that point, when it's kind of too late. So, I mean, Counselor, what were you looking for in this policy?
Councilor Rivera, am I able to respond?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure what was being called on. So through the chair to the chief, and thank you so much for coming in tonight. And I feel like these two orders are very connected, right? This very much came out of myself and Councilor Rivera looking in at the Fire Commission minutes from a year and a half to 2 years ago and seeing those examples, right, of those three folks that you mentioned who were brought in front of the Fire Commission, had sort of asked for an extension, then, realized to what exactly you just said, that they couldn't respond fast enough to meet the requirements before the time was up. And so they ended up having to resign from the department. And I'm completely hearing what you're saying about the difficulties. And I think what we're looking for is a way for the department to say whether they're creating a requirement around folks checking in with folks who are mandated, to have the EMT training and licensure, but don't have it yet. If there's someone who is actually tasked to check in with folks and say, what progress are you making? What tests have you signed up to take? Okay, I know that you signed up for this test. How did you do on it? Wanting to kind of help create the culture in the department for folks to be able to feel like it's not that I have to myself come up with the comfort to be able to say that I'm struggling, but there be a structure in the department that's naming, we're here to help you. Please tell us what's going on.
So,
And my question to you is more about how many mandated EMTs right now in terms of positions maybe don't have that licensure, or was it just a one-time problem and now everyone that's mandated has it?
so right now, the only people that don't have it that are mandated are 3 people that are I'm going to correct myself, 2 people at the fire academy because one had their EMT when they started the job. So that's where we're at. Right now, we're at a spot, we haven't had a hiring in a while, so everyone except for 2 of them have it, and they're at the fire academy right now. They've only been I think we hired them in August. So they're very new hires. And there is they have a company officer who they do evaluations every month in their probation, and they touch base. And I think, unfortunately, it's always, I'm doing okay. Oh, I just missed it. I'm going to be fine. I just missed it. I'm going to be fine. And again, I do think it was kind of a one-time thing going on there in that little area. But again, it's, it runs into the, oh no, I'll be okay. I just missed by a couple points, or I know where I need to study now. I'm going to be fine. And, maybe those check-ins are because those check-ins happen monthly. They sit down for the first year. It doesn't happen as much after their first year, counselor, because that's where the evaluations are during their probationary period, their probationary evaluations every month. But that's a check-in monthly that happens with their company officer. And they're in the class, they ask how the class is going. If they're not signed up yet, it's, are they an EMT on the checklist? If not, are they signed up for class? Yes, if so, when's the start date? So they definitely check in with that, but I definitely hear what you're saying. And it's just a matter of check-ins. I mean, I definitely think we can do something with that. We can definitely make that work. It's a matter of just checking in with them, see how they're doing, or maybe have them give us progress reports up until the point where they get an EMT. I think we could definitely do that. So if that's kind of what.
I still hear you saying that the check-ins mostly happen in the first year, but isn't there a kind of an interstitial step where they have to, at the mid-year, the first year, say, oh, I haven't met it yet, I need that extra year? And then
Yes.
I wonder what happens between that point and the end of that second year.
Yeah, and that's where I'm definitely acknowledging they cannot, because those check-ins don't happen every single month with them as to how they're doing. They're working with their company officer every day, but we can definitely put something together where, on a quarterly basis up until they get it, or a monthly basis, we're seeing where they're at with this, and, doing something where if they need help, they need to ask, and see where we can steer them. We could definitely do something like that, counselor.
I think that sounds great. And I think also that extra layer of formality sometimes gives people the permission to say, yes, actually, I've taken 2 and I haven't done well, and here I need support. I think sometimes that layer of formality can create the capacities for those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely understand what you're looking for. Now, I just wanted to make sure what actually we were looking for, because I'm like, I don't really know what support direction we're going for. So I appreciate you taking your time, have the conversation with me, kind of put me in the right direction.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a heavy lift. It's more about naming who is going to do those check-ins, how often will they happen, and then, I know that there's, great communication between yourself and the fire commission, but what does it look like to sort of give the heads up? Hey, we have these few folks who are heading into year 2, don't have their EMT cert, so maybe the communication too also back to the fire commission.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely touch base with the commission about who doesn't have it yet and does. We talk about that at the meetings. But absolutely, and I think I think this is definitely something I can, my training division, just kind of track on them. That's not going to be a problem, Counselor.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate your input.
Okay, thank you, Councilor McGrath-Smith. And we have Carmen Ocasio. Councilor Carmen Ocasio has also a question.
I have two questions on how and when do you notice that the firefighters are in any type of trouble on learning the task? And two, are these firemen are out into the field even though they don't pass these tests?
Yes, they're working. They're working. They're not working. They're working at a first responder level as opposed to an EMT level. It's a little different level of care, but you have to meet the minimum of first responder to work in Massachusetts on the street as a firefighter. So everyone's a first responder. It's just a different level of care to be an EMT. And when we have 2 Class 5 ambulances that I'm not sure, but Engine 1 that runs out of headquarters and Engine 6 that runs out of Homestead Ave. Those are actually Class 5 ambulances. They don't transport, but they're able to work to the basic level of care, which is a little more robust than like a first responder. So they wouldn't be able to work as an EMT on those, but as long as you have 2 EMTs with it, they can still run as an ambulance.
Okay.
So yeah, they work with others. Yes, they do work on the street when they're not an EMT because they're working at a first responder level.
So when they return back to the station, to the ones that you guys already identified, the one that when they come back to the station, how do you see them? Are they like spooked or like kind of weird looking?
People, they can react differently to trauma, if that's kind of what you're asking, the trauma you would see on the street. Even
Yes.
people at an EMT level can have different reactions to trauma. When there's severe incidents, there's resources like critical stress incident debriefing teams that the state has put together that we would call in if someone needed it. What we've learned is you don't force those on people. It goes, because that can actually make things worse also. So what they've learned is these teams are available. They'll reach out to anyone who needs us. We're here for you. Reach out to us and we'll come in and do it. But so there is resources if people are having struggles because of some of the things they have done they've seen and had to do on the street.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the firefighters. They are struggling because it's not easy to do the job that you guys do, The
Yeah,
fire department, police department, or the ambulance, it's very hard. So it could take a toll on them, and they can, I hate to see them, resign from something that they wanted to do, become a firefighter or something, and just because there's obstacles in the middle,
Yeah,
they
and there's
go over.
Counselor, there's options. Like if someone starts feeling a little more stressed, there's ways we can deal with it where you can move them to a little bit, if they're in a high call district where you're doing a lot of calls and a lot of that, you can move to slower stations and that helps give them breaks from that. There's definitely ways we can work with them to try to keep their stress levels down. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of instances of people resigning. We have a lot of people we hire. It's a one entity besides, where you hire someone and you get them and they usually stay with us until retirement. That's just like the culture in the fire department, and that's how it usually works. And it's actually good for the city of Hoyoke because we have longtime employees who know the city well and know the people and their needs, and it works having people who work here for up to 32 years. But we definitely have ways we can handle people if we see that it's starting to take a toll on them and they're starting to have, like a PTSD style setup, or, even, just if they just need a break. There's definitely resources out there that we can send them to if, from depending on the level of care they may need.
Yeah, and they have to want to ask for the help also, so.
Yeah, the thing about that is sometimes you can notice it too.
Yeah,
You
you
see
can notice it,
changes
yeah.
in them. You see different changes, whether they're withdrawn or whether
Yeah.
they, sudden changes in their behaviors and everything. You can kind of see some of that stuff, whether it be at home stress that they can bring into, whether it be a relationship or stress at home or anything else too. All those things could definitely impact people when they're working. And you try to keep an eye out. It's the people that work with them on a daily basis, the people within their company that would notice those things, because they would see the changes in someone, because they become very close in their living environments. They work together for 48 hours a week, where they live together, work together. They actually really get to know people, but know each other very well. And you would definitely notice when there's a change in that person. So those are the people we count on to notice if there's a change in someone and they may need help or may need to move to a different scenario, a different situation in the department to kind of take a little bit of stress off.
I also wanted to give you guys props for always, because where I live, the fire alarm always going off, and the alarm goes off. We call, and you guys are there within minutes, a minute or two, So, good job.
It's absolutely, and it's always just refreshing if it's a false alarm. We'd rather have that than,
Yeah.
because it's definitely refreshing if you get there and it's not a major incident.
Yeah, actually, I be feeling sorry for you guys. Have to come constantly, because somebody's smoking in the hallway, the alarm go off, and it's like, and also noticing that even though alarms go off, the residents don't even come out, so it's like their zone, but the alarm going off, the fire department is there, nobody's outside.
Yeah,
It's weird,
that's
yeah.
always a challenge, and it's I'm sure you can remember back to even the 106 Northeast Street
Yeah.
incident where the alarms are going off for an hour and there's an active fire in the building, and if people get out, and if it's no big deal at the end, it's no big deal at the end. We'll clear the building, you'll go back in, you're outside for 10-15 minutes. If it is an incident, you're going to be glad you got out. So it's definitely, my advice to people is if the alarms are going off, go out. For families to have a meeting area, especially when you're talking about big blocks and big buildings, for that family unit to have a meeting area so that when they do go out of the building, they meet and they can take accountability of each other to make sure that everyone is out. That's an important thing for people. I know Lieutenant Palchar does a lot of outreach within the schools as part of like the SAFE program and everything, and she talks about that, and I can't stress it enough. Definitely don't wait till there's emergency to talk about what you're going to do during the emergency. Have a plan in place and practice it every time the alarms go off, so that when it comes and it's an actual incident, it's second nature.
Okay. So, Chief, I have a quick question. I know this order's from about almost a year ago, and you probably already answered, but I can't remember. I was just wondering, so if you have a firefighter, and there's people out there that are probably not good in taking tests. It could be an excellent firefighter, but not good at taking tests. Is there help for them in that situation, or no?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, there's a lot of resources, even just within our department. We have a lot of people that are very educated in EMS and have been in EMS for a long time. A lot of our people are instructors. So it may be at the Mass Fire Academy, they're instructors, but they're instructors and they can help them with strategies on how to work past their difficulties and be able to retain the information. The biggest step is they gotta, and this is what we were talking about with Counselor McGrath Smith, is just being able to ask for help so we know, and that's what she was talking about, building layers of check-ins so that it's not as hard to ask for help. But yeah, if they ask for help, there's definitely, we can get them most of the time, unless it's, I don't know, there's always the one out there that you won't be able, but most of the time we can get them in the right direction, even if we have to you show them the study, strategies that are going to help them learn the information and retain it. And also then there's a lot of good study guides out there that help them with you know, like there's all sorts of study guides and where you can self-test yourself, and you know, there's rapid fire ones. There's a lot of good stuff out there, and it's the amount of companies that make them, it's endless. So when you find one that works, you know what I mean, so we can at least steer them in that direction, and also try to help them, you know, with strategies that are going to work for them to help retain the information.
Okay, and then the last one is, so once they approach the 2-year deadline and they didn't pass, do they need to resign, or you keep them at that level, just a first responder, or this is something mandatory?
No, that's where we have to, they
Let
either
go.
have to resign or it's termination. Their best bet is to resign, because what we tell them is if they resign and they get their EMT to come back to us, and as soon as we're hiring, we'll hire them.
Gotcha.
And we've already done that with 2 of them. We have one of the people hasn't gotten their EMT yet and come back, but 2 of them have, and they've been back with us for almost a year now.
Oh, okay, so they could just go,
Yep, once
Get it on their own?
get their EMT, bring their card in, show us, and you know, then we'll work with the fire commission and get them reinstated.
oh, okay, so excellent. There is resources out
Yeah.
there, and there is help, so it's just a matter, like you said, it's a matter of them
And if you don't get it
asking.
in that time frame, it's not the end of the world. There's a way to, you know, go get it and then come back.
Okay, so that's excellent, yeah. So that, like you said, there is resources out there, and there's a way of still becoming a firefighter, even if you don't pass. You just got to give it that extra push and get it
Keep working, yes.
and come back. Okay. So Counselor Meg McGrath-Smith, any other questions?
No questions on my end, and thank you so much to the chief for coming in and presenting all of that. Very helpful.
Okay, so we're going to be marking this complied with?
Yes.
Yes, please, and if he could just submit anything in writing when he has it, that would be wonderful as a communication line item.
Okay, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So this
you very
order
much.
has been complied with. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate
I
you.
appreciate everything.
And
Thank
good
you for all
job.
of your
Keep up the
support.
good job
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
And thank you, Counselor Ocasio, for joining me.